Hello and welcome to another edition of Lost Louisiana. I'm your host, Charlie Whinham. In this episode of our continuing series, we will take a look at endangered sites throughout Louisiana. We're at Laura Plantation here in Vacherie, and this will be one of two stops that we take in St. James Parish. We'll also take a look at a couple of old high schools, one in Baskin and the other in Lafayette, and check in on how the restoration efforts are going there, whether or not they are making the grade. I'll also introduce you to a world-renowned architect by the name of Buckminster Fuller and his geodesic dome that sits abandoned and ignored. We'll also step inside the old Capitol House Hotel and Hotel Heidelberg in Baton Rouge, where history is in the process of restoration. So sit back and enjoy as we take you through a trip along Lost Louisiana. The Laura Plantation was set for demolition in the early 1980s in order to build a new Mississippi River bridge. However, an earthquake fault line subsequently saved the plantation. But in 2004, there was a devastating fire that nearly destroyed the old sugarcane house, if not for the fast work of some firefighters and a little bit of luck. At the Laura Plantation in St. James Parish, it's not about the buildings on the 13-acre site. It's all about the stories that lie within.
The other half of the slaves were here, laying the foundation to this house. They made all of these bricks from the Mississippi River clay.
Over 200 years of memories ring out here in Vacherie, all for visitors from around the world to experience firsthand. Your recollection of plantation history may not ring a bell from the version depicted here. Park your Hollywood perceptions of Gone with the Wind at the door. This is a Creole plantation. You will not see the ornate white pillared main house that was typical of the American plantation owner.
It's not a typical southern plantation home because South Louisiana was not typically the South. We had a different culture here from the very beginning. It was not the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant culture of the rest of the South, and this typifies what was in Louisiana. These people who lived here, this was a place where they came to work, sugar plantation. They did not want people to know how wealthy they were. It's a place where only French was spoken, and both the French and the Alsatian family were Creole families. And so when we saw this place in the late 1980s, early 1990s, we realized it was rare because of what had happened here and how it typified the older culture of Louisiana.
The plantation is named after Laura Gore, the great-granddaughter to the original owner, Guillaume Duparc. Thanks to the thousands of documents retrieved from the National Archives in Paris, along with Laura's 150-page memoir, history lives on.
She told her dad when she was 14 she wants to grow up to be a modern, liberated American. Now, liberated to her meant to be liberated from the burdens of the plantation.
The 200-year-old Laura Plantation main house, also known as the Maison Principale, was almost history itself when a fire broke out in August of 2004. Fire could be seen for miles, and if not for some very fortunate breaks, this facility would have been lost forever.
So it was traumatic. Most of the people who work here, we have about 35 were here, and we were all in shock. But the firemen were incredibly skilled. They, believe it or not, they were having a meeting of 3 fire departments about 2 blocks away, and so when they got the call, they were here. They saved this house. The tin roof had come down and was likely to fall off, and it would take the walls with them. So every room was scaffolded and braced with iron and these braces here. It is endangered, but we have such wonderful friends, and we've had such incredible support from not only Whitney Plantation, but Homus House and Oak Alley and Evergreen, that we're in good shape. And our attendance is still good, and that, of course, pays all the rest of the bills.
Fortunately, attendance did not cool off after the blaze. In fact, they set a record in 2004 with 110,000 visitors. Here, history is not sugar-coated in the cane fields, and the story of the hundreds of slaves working on this 12,000-acre farm is far from overlooked.
You have to understand that when Laura was born here, 15 people who lived on the site were free and 185 were enslaved. Can't get past that fact. But let me tell you, people who come here are interested in finding out what really happened on this place. In the slave quarters that still stand were written down the stories about Compère Lapin, Compère Bouquet, the stories of a clever rabbit and stupid fool. A teenager, 18 years old, by the name of Alcée Forche, came to Laura, went to the neighboring plantations, and he wrote down these stories. They would later be adapted and published in English as the Tales of Burr Rabbit. They were written here in French by the slaves that had come down from Senegal in the 1720s. And that's an important part of our heritage that we did not want to lose. Laura, who is born during the Civil War and lives until President Kennedy, 1963, almost 102 years, gets a good idea, I think, of how things changed. She will write in her memoirs that the Civil War came and the Civil War left, and nothing changed on this place. The inequities that she saw of the workers and the owners persisted. There was still a lot of poverty out here in the river region all the way into the 1880s and 1890s when she would finally leave. I think that's what we get from her writings, is that you really see a continuity of history. And that's what makes this place rare, because now we have a wonderful personal insight into the way life was like after the Civil War and well before the Civil War.
We next move to a building that's more fitting for a science fiction movie than something out of the pages of the past. World-renowned architect Buckminster Fuller designed his only geodesic dome in Louisiana for the Union Tank Car Company just outside of Baton Rouge. That building now sits idle, as does the significance of Buckminster Fuller's only Louisiana work. An incredible architectural treasure is tucked away in East Baton Rouge Parish. This abandoned structure lays like a fallen geometric tree in the forest that nobody heard or even knew of its existence. It is the former Union Tank Car Company's repair shop and opened in 1958. The 110,000 square foot of unobstructed space was used to clean, fix, and repaint rail cars. It was front cover news in July of '58 by Fortune magazine and was heralded as the world's largest circular building without internal supports. Just as distinctive as the design was the designer, Buckminster Fuller, inventor, architect, poet, and philosopher, who has been hailed as one of the greatest minds of the 20th century. His flat map design of the world eliminated distortions of other world maps and could be folded into a rough globe. The geodesic dome is Fuller's signature invention. The creator of over 20 patents made the cover of Time magazine in 1964 and depicts Fuller's head in the pattern of a geodesic dome. This artwork later became a U.S. stamp in 2003.
He's actually invented a new way to build buildings. And we're still building them the way the Greeks and Romans did in many other ways. It represents a new engineering technique. And Buckminster Fuller started building these around 1950. And between 1950 and the time that this dome was built in Baton Rouge, he built literally thousands of domes all over the world.
When you go inside and look up, the space is so huge that it's breathtaking. And the shape of the panels, which are six-sided hexagonal panels, create what someone says looks like you're inside a diamond. It's just something you'll never forget.
But this is a forgotten facility after closing over 20 years ago. Current owners, faced with huge liability issues, have fenced in the area and make it very clear that this is private property. Any trespassers will be jailed. But there is a movement underway with the hopes of bringing the building and the lost Louisiana memory of Buckminster Fuller back to life.
At one point, I tried to get this dome nominated to the National Register of Historic Places because it's fully deserving. It's historically significant And it represents a new trend or a new way of doing things, which in many respects are better than the old ways.
It's very important. You know, our work here at the foundation is saving Baton Rouge's great buildings, and we know we have a lot of unique buildings, from shotguns to monumental buildings. But people have said to me that the Geodesic Dome in Baton Rouge may be our most important piece of architecture. And that's an amazing statement when we think of the great buildings we have across our state.
I think that anybody that can change the profile of architecture is a genius. And we definitely have to be preserve that. Baton Rouge is historically significant for its politics, and it's extremely significant for architecture. We have a Gothic old state capitol. We have an Art Deco new state capitol. And we have one of the great inventions of modern architecture out there in the boonies, you know, that dome. And it's just fitting that preservation takes place.
The geodesic dome is 375 feet in diameter, 116 feet high at the center, and could fit a baseball diamond. Each of the 320 welded steel hexagons weighs roughly 2 tons. The challenge now facing local preservationists: how can the Bucky Dome be saved? Could this geodome have a use somewhere riverfront in Baton Rouge?
I absolutely would say yes. We're a sporting city. We're a city that's revitalizing its downtown. We're a city that needs exhibition space.
He was blind until he was 8 years old, or he had such poor vision that he could only work with his hands. And he discovered the strength of the hexagon and the geodesic dome by putting things together and building like a Erector set.
I hope that the spotlight on it right now will enable some talented people in our community, some people who think out of the box, to come together and work with Kansas City Southern Railway, the owner, and come up with a solution for this building, because the best thing we can do is find a way to put it back into commerce. It's a great challenge, but what a great challenge to have.
1 year before George Washington Carver began his scientific experiments on the soybean and the peanut, a school opened in Lafayette, which dedicated itself to schooling young African Americans. Back in its heyday, the Holy Rosary Institute educated children not only locally, but from all across the country. Many lives were changed, but one thing that also changed was the condition of the Holy Rosary High School, which closed in 1993. And it's the hope of alumni and friends to resurrect this building in a way that will help the entire community.
There's the crucifix that stands in front of the 3-story building. That's Jesus Christ crucified. I feel that Holy Rosary, the building, has been crucified.
93 years ago, the Holy Rosary Institute opened north of Lafayette. Here, a Bavarian priest named Father Philip Keller purchased an 84-acre farm which had once been the property of the sister of the King of France. With a donation from Sister Catherine Drexel, a 3-story building was dedicated in March of 1914. Originally, Holy Rosary was dedicated to the education of African American girls, but became coeducational in 1947.
George Brown Sr., class of 1954.
Louisiana, Como, St. Julian, and I am the class of 1958.
I'm Ken Mouton, class of 1961.
Velva Ollier, and the class was 36. I enjoyed it. I think I made my first dress that I could wear when I was 9 years old in elementary school here.
I didn't know about the education until I left here and went to college, and I left college and went to the service and really got to intermingle with people from different states and from different schools, and found out that our education was just as good or better than a lot of those that I met.
But then Father Francis was the one that told us, if you don't want to go to college, get a trade. And I went to Chicago, and I got interested in data entry where I was working at, and I got a trade in data entry.
Holy Rosary was famous for so many things, not only top-notch education. It was named one of the top 10 boarding schools in America at one time, and but also good in sports and as well as music.
I played basketball and baseball. I was just average in basketball. In baseball, I've done much better. In fact, I was able to defeat my rival, Paul Bro, all 4 years.
In the middle of the campus was the little candy store and sodas and chips, and there you would meet briefly to talk to the girls.
A quality education was the cornerstone to Holy Rosary. So was a foundation of discipline by the nuns and priests.
They made us write lines. That was one form of punishment. We had to write lines if we did something.
I shall not do this, whatever it is again.
And pages
Thousand
and pages.
times.
Yes.
Kind of like the first Bart Simpsons of your day.
These are some drawings that were done by the university students under Mr. Tom Sammons, who's an architect, and also community development. So they're showing, and this was a part of their class projects, they were showing the school the way it is now in this upper picture here and the way it could look.
There is an effort underway to save Holy Rosary's main building, but the alumni do not wish to reopen it as a school. Rather, a community center for the area that would serve as a focal point for health programs, social services, continuing education, as well as restoring the dormitory elements for business or religious retreats. Their vision is to reapply the practices they learned here decades ago, when the Sisters of the Holy Family reached out to young African American girls and boys.
We want to have an exhibit that will include all of the classes that ever came here to Holy Rosary, all of the nuns and the directors of Holy Rosary, the priests and the brothers who served here. It will be an awesome museum because there's so many good memories.
It's the pride that they gave us for being who we were. It was a sense of dignity that we got from the nuns. Although I was in school at the height of integration, I felt that here at Holy Rosary we could succeed.
I get a heartache all the time I look at it. I think of the grandeur it once was. It still represents to me in the form that it is, you know, a monument to something good in a world that was bad at the time.
We want to turn it around. We want it to rise. This is going to be the Renaissance, Holy Rosary Renaissance.
Welcome back to Lost Louisiana, Endangered Sites. I'm your host, Charlie Whinham. We now head to northern Louisiana and into Franklin Parish. Times-Picayune writer Bill Campbell once wrote about Baskin, Louisiana, that traveling by car, it's 3 unremarkable seconds along Highway 15 in the middle of the Delta Desert. But if you slow down a bit and get to know Baskin better, as Mr. Campbell did, you'll find out that there are many wonderful stories coming out of this small rural community. Most of those stories seem to center around the old Baskin High School, a historic facility that has seen better days. The old Baskin High School was built in 1926 at a cost of $66,000. Almost 80 years old, this building has been a community focal point since its construction. Listed on the National Register of Historical Places in 1981, Old Baskin High stores many of its memories well, even though it was closed in the late 90s. When did Baskin close?
In 1997.
Was that a sad day?
It was.
A sad year?
A sad year. It was a sad year all over the parish. At that time, we had 8 high schools. And then with the consolidation, we consolidated down to 3 high schools. And then after that, we went to 2 high schools, and now this is our first years having 1 high school.
My daughter taught here until they closed the high school. And my husband and I both graduated in the same class together. I married the principal's oldest son. So, yes, I would love to see this building remain. I think we are losing a lot when we lose our old structures in more ways than one.
Well, to me it's important because it's one of the main things about Baskin that's been here. It's always been here. And it's one of the things that bring the people together. The memories that you have of Baskin, the people that have lived here all their lives, this is where their memories started. And this is just the center of Baskin to me.
I got interested in this building. Matter of fact, I fell in love with it when I first started working here. And my family, my husband's family, went to school here. And so it just kind of became very special to me.
This auditorium, for being built in 1926, is still in remarkable condition.
It is, and it's never had any major renovation, just a paint job and a little bit, you know, but and the acoustics are so good in here. We've had professional people come and talk about the acoustics being so good in this auditorium.
Kitty Wells, the Wilburn Brothers, and many other Grand Ole Opry stars performed here. Even Huey P. Long and his entire ticket held a political rally inside this grand auditorium. Every graduate of Baskin High School received their diploma here, except for the class of 1927, the year of the catastrophic flood. Baskin High School is also the home of the nation's longest winning streak. For 6 years, from 1947 to 1953, the girls' basketball team never lost a game. Under the guidance of National Hall of Fame coach Miss Willie Edna Tarbutton, the Baskin Lady Rams won 218 consecutive games. That mark still stands today as a national record for organized sports, high school, college, or professional. Even Ripley's Believe It or Not makes note of the Baskin High School ladies' success.
We had 5 minutes from the time the bell rang in this building to get from here, go through that door, down the gym floor to the dressing room and be dressed out on the court, warming up. It occurred at a time that many of us did not have a whole lot. There wasn't a lot of entertainment for you to go to. And of course, we concentrated on basketball. It's hard to imagine what we actually accomplished, because when we were rolling up those victories, my years here, it didn't occur to us that basically we were setting a history that probably never would be broken.
Due to overcrowding at the junior high school, 3 rooms, including Coach Tarbutton's classroom, were reopened this year. Perhaps the winning spirit of Tani Tarbutton, created over 50 years ago, can pull out a victory for this old high school in the waning moments. For that to happen, it will take many people to come off the bench and make a contribution.
We're really, trying to get as much support as we possibly can. And I know the alums come every 5 years and they have such a good time here. And I think they've really been wanting to get the building restored because there's there's so many good memories here.
Once upon a time in Louisiana, power brokers and politicians met regularly at the old Capitol House Hotel, located just a few blocks away from the state capitol. Originally named the Hotel Heidelberg in the 30s, the name changed to the Capitol House after a new expansion. But the address of 201 Lafayette has been dormant for decades. That's about to change when the Hilton chain of hotels plans to reopen it in 2006. And there are plenty of people who are just dying to get out of their rocking chairs and see this building come back to life. somewhere in time, memories from a Baton Rouge landmark hotel and a one-chair barbershop in Donaldsonville weave together. Paul Email Jr. has worked 2 jobs since the Truman administration, cutting hair at his barbershop for nearly 6 decades and working as a bellman at the Heidelberg Hotel. Back in the day, Paul's customers would include Earl K. Long, big band leaders, and Jack Dempsey. Now, he's left with the likes of Gus, Lester, and Clyde.
Today they got haircuts look like a rat nest. Them haircuts they put out today. Looks like some rats got loose in their hair.
Cut back to 1947 when Paul returned from the war and traded out his Marine uniform for a bellman's coat.
Oh, we had a good time. It was good people. We had fun over there.
The story to follow of the Heidelberg Hotel and Capitol House, however, was not so great. The once proud flagship hotel of the capital city sat abandoned for decades and was the subject of some preservation efforts that fell short. That is, until June of 2004, when plans were announced to restore the hotel. The Capitol House and Heidelberg Hotel is scheduled to reopen in June of 2006 in most of its original splendor.
I think it's a part of the heart and soul of Baton Rouge, and so therefore I think it's very important to save. The history and character and charm of it, first of all, it'll be the only hotel on the river with a river view, and those things I think add to the appeal. People want to be in a hotel where Huey Long was, or John F. Kennedy was, or Fidel Castro. So I think there's this charm that goes way beyond the location.
The Heidelberg House was the legendary home base to Louisiana politics outside the state capitol. Huey and Earl Long made the Heidelberg part branch office, part retreat and hideaway.
I didn't see Huey Long, but they had a place where he used to stay up there, which I never got to see because nobody knew where it was. But I did see his brother Earl Long when he was inaugurated. They had at the Heidelberg Hotel.
Some say the ghosts of Huey and Earl still lurk among the shadows and broken glass of the old building. Bob Lemoyne is the project manager of the renovation and took us around for a private tour.
Actually, the lobby was a little bit further here, but at one time this was used as part of the lobby. In the later years, it kind of changed over. You can see some of the 50s style architecture that was used back then. This was the grand ballroom, I guess you would call it, of the Heidelberg. It's the very top of the Heidelberg. It's the highest point you can get on a floor in the Heidelberg, other than the very roof itself.
Bob, it's just you and me now. We lost the rest of the group, so
yeah. Well, I
lead
think
the way to Huey's tunnel.
I think perhaps the rest got scared maybe to come across Huey down here. Here we had the entrance of the famous tunnel that goes under Lafayette Street and across to the old King Hotel. You know, we can just imagine all of the deals that were cut in this area. Of course, you know, there's been a lot of rumors that from people who've been in this old building after it's been abandoned, that you can down here you can actually smell the cigar smoke from time to time down here, and that on the stairs that they've seen shapes of a white suit. But again, I've not been privileged to see that.
You haven't seen any reminders of Huey so far?
Unfortunately not.
Well, the exciting part about this project is that we'll be able to bring back a lot of the amenities that were in the original design of both the Heidelberg and the Capitol House. We'll have the new grand ballroom that was built when the Capitol House was put together. We'll have the historic ballroom that's on the top floor of the Heidelberg. And we'll also be able to recreate a lot of the features of the original lobby of the original Heidelberg Hotel as well. And then probably one of the best kept secrets in town is the pool deck, which is on top of the parking garage, has an awesome view of the river and West Baton Rouge Parish. It'll be going back with a pool and a pool deck. And it'll be a great component of the building as well.
Our rooms, I think, the rooms were $3.75 for a single, and a double was $4.50, and a suite was $8 to $12 a piece. And I passed by the hotel, and I said, boy, that thing bring back some memories to go there. We done good. Our average tip then was $0.25, was the average tip.
Tips have now turned into tall tales, some of them by Paul, some from his loyal customers.
I saw Jack Dempsey too over there. I roomed him when they came down to Baton Rouge, and I roomed him, and he used to tip $2 bill. So I made him, when he tipped me a $2 bill, I asked him to sign it. But, you know, I made a landing with Jack Dempsey in the Pacific during World War II. We landed on Okinawa. He was in the 4th wave, and I was in the 4th wave. And I spoke to him, and I asked him when he gave me that $2 bill, I said, how about autographing it? I loaned it to my little brother to show the kids at school, and he spent the thing. I could have killed him, man.
At age 79, this former bellman, now barber, just might rush back into the past and visit Baton Rouge when renovation to the Capitol House and Heidelberg Hotel are complete.
I tell you, I just pray the Lord I'm still here. I'd be lucky if I'm still here. Yeah, I would sure like to see that.
Our travels through Lost Louisiana takes us back to St. James Parish, where we began. According to folklore, about 150 years ago, there was a traveling merchant by the name of Leon Gottschalk. Well, one night, sun was setting and he needed accommodations and asked an owner at a plantation house if he could stay the night. But Antoine Budowski said no and sent Leon on his way. A little bit upset, Leon promised that one day that plantation he would reserve it for himself. Well, in 1860, the plantation was up for sale. Leon bought it, and thus began the beginnings of Reserve Louisiana. Along the River Road in St. John Parish sits a 240-year-old home, which dates back to one of the area's first European settlers, Jean-Baptiste Lobel. Over the centuries, occupants of this plantation house played key roles in the St. John sugarcane industry. In the early 1820s, Francois and Elise Rioux, two free men of color, owned the plantation and home. The brothers were cousins to Norbert Rioux, an inventor and scientist who revolutionized a new refining process in the sugarcane industry. His system of vacuum pans heating one another in sequence had immediate impact. By 1896, Leon Gottschalk bought the 2,000-acre plantation and main house from Antoine Budowski. Leon Gottschalk and his family turned around a bankrupt plantation and by 1915 opened a sugar refinery on the site.
It and the entire Gottschalk plantation thing is the backbone of this area. It served for many years. That was the main source of income for the families of this area, both blacks and whites. I was a teacher and a principal here for many years, for more than 30 years. And I think that the history of St. John Parish is beneficial to our young people. I particularly want young black children of this parish to know about the history of this building and about the history of Gottschalk and the history of the entire parish, but particularly they need to know the contribution that was made by blacks.
The most recent and significant renovation effort came in the early 1990s when the Gottschalk Reserve House moved from its original site, which is now property owned by the Port of South Louisiana, to its current location.
It was amazing. It was amazing. When they first talked about moving this building, I wanted that to happen, but I thought, oh, that thing will crumble before it gets there. But it made it.
It's hard to believe this big house being moved 2 feet, let alone nearly a quarter of a mile, about 12 years ago. However, monumental tasks will be the cornerstone for local officials in making this 240-year-old Gaucho house something for future generations, as well as future tourists.
What we'd like to do is to make here an African American museum, a museum and a tourist stop. It's right on the bus routes, and a couple of 100,000 people go right past this building. In the museum, we could focus on the sugar industry, on the part that the river played as transportation. I have wonderful expectations of what could happen here. From here to about 1.5 miles to the ferry. Our long-term goal would be to have an arts district, and this is just the beginning.
The biggest challenge to this project, like many restoration efforts, is finding the money. Organizers would love to secure one benefactor to take them under their wing. Unfortunately, that has not happened, and the only nest egg you'll find here comes from the hundreds of pigeons currently making Gottschalk House their home.
Business and industry has gone through a lot in the 90s and after September the 11th.
anywhere from small business to industry. We've spent a ton of money on technology and security. And so we haven't found, you know, someone who is willing to, you know, step forward. So what we've had to do is go to some other resources on a state and federal level and apply for some smaller grants. It's going to happen. It's just taking more time than we anticipated.
I look at it from the prospect of what it could be, how it could be developed into a real great tourist attraction and a historical museum.
I hope you've enjoyed this edition of Lost Louisiana, Endangered Sites. Louisiana holds incredible history and culture, and some of the folks that you've met during this journey play an essential role in keeping